Hi everyone, welcome to the Trinidad and Tobago Film Festival 2020 industry event. And thanks so much for joining us. All right, so this year our full film program will be screened online from September 9th to 15th with our new media exhibition installed at Medulla Art Gallery in Woodbrook, Port of Spain. If you're joining us via Facebook Live, please feel free to post all your questions in the comment section below and we'll address them during the session. Don't forget, you can check out our full film listing and pay for film bundles at online.ttfilmfestival.com. We'd like to thank all our TTFF sponsors and partners. TTFF is given leading sponsorship by the Ministry of Tourism, Culture and the Arts, contributing sponsorship by Republic Bank Limited, with Shell Trinidad and Tobago Limited supporting TTFF 2020 online industry events. So guys, we're here with the director of the LAST Tree, Shola Amoo. Hi, welcome.
Hi, how are you?
So let's talk about your film. His film is about a young man who is living in the UK. His mother has recently come to get him from a foster parent, and it's now kind of delving into their relationship. And it's a lot of themes, a theme on parenthood, themes on race. So firstly, let's talk about what inspired you to even make this film.
It's semi-autobiographical, so having been fostered, I was always interested in the subject, and I was also interested in speaking with other people who had been fostered and kind of like collating their experience. So The Last Tree is kind of like an amalgamation of a lot of different experiences in the kind of diasporic foster care scenario. And yes, I guess that was the impetus behind wanting to make the film.
Okay, so there are two different cultures almost. One when he's living with his foster parents and going to a predominantly white school. And then there's the other culture of going into a predominantly Black school when he starts living with his mother. So tell me, is that something that you experienced personally?
Yeah, for sure. For anyone who's fostered in that kind of transracial way, from like an African or Caribbean culture to like ostensibly white culture, it's a bit of a culture shock and shift. And I think I was very much interested in the extremes in that cultural shift and how a young child rationalizes or interprets that.
So there's a lot of confusion for him, especially with his relationship with his mother. One thing I found interesting was that when she cooked the food for him, I'm not recalling what type of food it was, but when she cooked food for him the first time when they start living together, and he's like, yes, no, can I have some cereal? And she was like, but you always like this when I've come to visit you before. You liked it before. Why don't you like it now? So I want to talk about that experience from the boy's point of view and from the mother's point of view.
Yeah, I think from the boy's perspective and Femi's perspective, he is raised in a different type of culture, one that's almost like the opposite to the one that his mother kind of brings. And so I think for him, everything around that culture that he understands is a form of comfort and understanding, and anything outside of that can be perceived as a bit alien for a young boy or a young woman. And so I think for his mum, it's really hard because that can feel like the rejection of his inherent culture. But that's really what the whole film's predicated on. It's like a disconnect between the two.
But I think what's so interesting is that when she cooked it as a visitor, he was fine to kind of experience the meal as something one-off, something interesting, something novel, but not necessarily as a way of life? And do you think that's how persons that either grow up in predominantly white communities perhaps see Black culture as it's something good to dabble in, but not necessarily how we want our everyday way of life to be?
I think it can be. I think it can also be in any culture where if you're settled in one kind of cultural unit and way and understanding, you're okay maybe to experience something that you know is kind of transient and isn't perennial. But then when you're completely removed from that comfort, and that's what was once perceived as alien is now your status quo, then it can become more desperate and more like weirdly a fight for survival, if that makes sense.
So I want to talk a little bit about parenting styles and the sort of juxtaposition of the parenting style of the foster parents and his actual mom. The foster parent is portrayed as sort of a gentler, she's more, I don't want to say the word loving, but she's gentler, and it's more, it's a more indulging kind of love, whereas, you know, his actual mom is a lot stricter. She has a lot more requirements. And I think anybody in African, Caribbean, definitely Caribbean household can relate to that. I think a lot of my Trinidadian friends, they often, you know, compare Jamaican households to slaves, because you have to wash the dishes, you have to clean the house before your mother get home, start the cooking, and not all children actually go through that. So I think it's interesting. I don't know if the comment of the film is necessarily frowning on that kind of parenting. So I did want to get your opinion on that, on the juxtaposition between parenting styles.
I'm not really, I don't think we place a judgment on a moral judgment on it. It's just two different cultures colliding in a way, and two different parenting styles. I mean, for Mary's kind of foster care approach, as opposed to his biological mom, who just comes from a different culture and a different world and has different requirements, different meanings of respect, different ways of how that respect is portrayed and received. It's like every culture has this kind of codes and cues, and Femi doesn't quite understand the codes and cues of his biological culture, and he has to kind of learn it so it can come across as oppressive to him from his perspective, and most of the films from his perspective. But there's definitely stuff that you learn in that process that is very useful as an adult.
It is, but he does rebel against that kind of parenting style. He never truly forms a bond with his actual mom until closer to the end of the film. He never really makes an attempt to, you know, find out who she is.
I think the thing is that I don't think he even really perceives her as his mom at that point, because that's not what he's known. And I think the film very much exists from the child's perspective in a way, in a very singular way, in a way that a lot of films don't. A lot of films will probably break into different perspectives. You see it from this angle now. It's solely from his perspective. So it's very visceral, and you feel everything as he feels it and experiences it. I don't think he has the maturity at that age to be able to make all of the kind of cultural and racial breakdowns that one can make when you're much older, which explains why later on is when he can make that connection with his mother.
So let's talk about the idea of perspective and why you chose only to to use his perspective, as opposed to sort of including maybe the mothers or the foster mothers. You only chose him. Why make that decision?
I felt like this film is like an odyssey across land and different environments, and I felt like Femi is the anchor through Lincolnshire, London, and Lagos, and I was really interested in what I didn't want to make was a film that had a kind of objective experience where you're sat watching it. What I wanted was subjective, where you're immersed. It's an immersive experience. So you hear sounds. Every technical element is about making it feel immersive. So you're not watching Femi, you are Femi, and you experience the world as Femi. And to do that, you need a singular perspective to really create that kind of evocative environment, and to build a character's journey and a character's understanding in an authentic way. So that's why I solely focused on that.
So we see him sort of grow through one of the issues with race, especially, was with the young lady, where they're saying who's blacker, your shoe or your skin, and even Femi's love of her, I think, is it that he comes to accept himself in the Black community through his love for her and through his love for the mother? Because at the beginning he was sort of okay with letting his friends kind of, tease her and mock her, and in the end he never really acts on it, but he does dream about being involved with this young lady.
Yeah, I think that's all to do with Femi's self-esteem, and he's someone who, because of the disjointed way he grew up, he's someone who walks through the world masked. There's how he presents, and there's what he is inside. And as many teenagers you speak to, a lot of the time they don't correlate, because you don't feel like you can be your authentic self, especially at that age. And so Femi, a lot of the time, is playing the tough guy. His friends are bullying this girl. He's not gonna make her look soft in front of them. So we're dealing with kind of almost like toxic masculinity in young men. And it's almost like in these dreams that he can free himself in a way. And it's through experiences he gains more and more confidence to fully express himself, and that's how he's able to stop them from bullying them.
But he never actually does express his love for her. He never actually makes a move on her. Why not?
Not in a, I guess, stereotypical declaration of intent, but what he does do is protect her and ultimately open himself up to wider feelings, not just from her, but from his teacher and eventually his mother.
So I wanted to talk a little bit about style before we kind of started to wrap up. So there are a lot of odes, I think, to Spike Lee. So you have that shot where he's kind of gliding around, kind of when he's lost in his consciousness. That's right after he gets beat up. Yeah, so let's talk about your influences for style, and cinematography and sound for the film.
Yeah, I think so. Everything that we wanted to do with the film was about making it subjective and immersive experience. So everything from sound design to camera choices was about that. There's a lot of movement, developing shots, continuous shots, because we want you to walk through the environments in the world like Femi, hear things like Femi, feel things like Femi. So that was so much the foundation. So filmmakers who were really important for that were people like Jacques Audiard, who did A Prophet, and some early Spike Lee. Those were really important references that I really took into the film. And really, what I like about Jack was the film moves from realism to surrealism very quickly, and so in a very organic way, and it's quite just has a kind of heightened dreamlike quality to it, and so that was really important to be able to capture that kind of more, I guess, social grittiness, but also for it to work on another layer, which was this kind of dreamlike quality.
So the last question I have for you is about one of the final scenes, the scene with the father, where we have all this sort of pomp to meet him, where the wife has to meet him first, and then his mother has to go in first, and then we meet him, and he is like backed by a Christian symbolism. So let's talk about the father and what does he really represent?
I think for me, it's hard for his father to represent anything but disappointment, because it's been an absent individual from his life, and he feels like this great moment where he gets the chance to finally meet him, and it's very much a letdown. But what's also important about that is that his father helps him understand his mother more, and so it enables a greater understanding, a greater elucidation of her experience and what she had to go through. In a way, closing the circle about what you could call the immigrant's dream, and the reasons why she almost felt forced out to have to travel to a new land to find better opportunities for his kid. But Femi coming back home to the motherland, and being able to understand her and her experiences, it kind of in a very interesting way closes a circle of immigration, of understanding, of cultural dissonance. And that's why I think those final scenes are so important, because he gets the opportunity to complete himself in a way that he had never had the opportunity before.
All right, that's great. And it was an amazing film, and we can't wait to see your next film in TTFF, I hope. So thank you guys for joining us. Thank you to the director of The Last Tree. Make sure that you go and buy the bundle on online ttfilmfestival.com. And thank you guys for joining us.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.